Hello, my beauty caterpillars, and today we are doing a book talk. I don't think I've done a book club video in like years. I think this might be number 3, could be number 4, don't really remember. I haven't been into reading for a while. I was in school and trying to just like get through that, and there was so much studying to do, so I kind of just put books aside for a while. And then I needed some time to decompress from all those books, and yeah, so I have started reading again in the past 6 months to a year maybe, and I've got a bunch of goodies that I have read that I have really enjoyed. TikTok is actually a great place to find book recommendations. There are so many out there. But I really love, most of these are romance novel books. There is one bit more like murder mystery-ish style that I want to talk about today as well. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I don't actually have these books here physically because a lot of them I read through either ebooks or like ebooks on my Kobo, or audiobooks too, because I've been really loving audiobooks lately too. Check out your local library because they have a ton of audiobooks. There's an app called Libby. I don't know if you can get it just in Canada or not, but you log into your local library and there's just so many really good audiobooks. I am obsessed, and you can listen to them offline too, which is super nice. It just like downloads the file onto your phone. You get it for 2 weeks and then away you go, and a lot of them are like 10-ish hours, most of them. Some of them are longer too, but I just find it's nice for my commutes to work, and then just, you know, around the house when I'm cleaning or doing chores and stuff like that, I listen to audiobooks. So I've been burning through them like crazy. I just listened to all of Harry Potter recently. Love that series. I haven't listened to Harry Potter, but like read the Harry Potter book since I was like in high school, like elementary, high school. So it's nice to like re-listen to those again. They're really fun. A little like a movie playing in my head. So anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. Yeah, let's get into the books I want to talk about. So the first series, this one is a series, the In Brunsburn trilogy series by Nora Roberts. So there's 3 books in that series. Anyways, it follows 3 different characters. So there are 3 brothers and 3 best friends, and throughout the 3 books they kind of end up finding their relationships. So they've known each other basically since high school, and the 3 brothers, there's Beckett, Owen, and Ryder are the 3 brothers. So the first book is about Beckett and Claire, who ends up being this girl he's loved since high school, but she married someone else who was a veteran. He passed away. They had 3 kids together, and she's moved back to the town of Brunsburn to kind of recollect herself and be back with her family now that her husband has passed away. And she runs a little bookstore cafe in town too. And Beckett and his 2 brothers own a construction company, and they have bought this inn that they are rebuilding. And they kind of watch, the first book is Claire and Beckett kind of falling in love together. The second book is Claire's best friend Avery and the brother Owen, and their kind of story of how they fall in love too. And then finally the third one, which you meet all these characters in the first book, the final one, Hope and Ryder end up falling in love together. They're kind of like enemies to lovers type of storybook, but like you need to read them in order to understand, because then you get snippets of Beckett and Claire's life throughout as well, and same with Owen and Avery. So they buy this inn, which ends up being like a big thing in the book too, because there's this ghost called Liz that they find there, and they research her and stuff, and it actually comes back that she is one of Hope's relatives too. And Hope is Avery and Claire's friend. She's from somewhere else, lives in a big city, and she's worked at a hotel, and they hire her to be the innkeeper for this inn, and that's how she kind of moves to the town and ends up finding like a relative who is Lizzie and doing a whole bunch of research. And you know, just a really cute love story. And then I like that it follows the three different brothers throughout and their kind of stories, and the narrative switches between the brothers, like the girls and the boys too. Or sorry, the women and the men, not girls and boys, they're adults. And it's just really cute love story, just kind of see how everyone's story evolves, because they all kind of find each other in a different way, even though they've known each other basically their whole lives, except for Hope. Hope is new to them, to the boys anyways. The girls known Hope for a while, but I think they met her in college or something like that. And then Avery owns a pizza business as well in town, which does play an important role, because then she eventually buys a restaurant too, and the boys renovate that, because they own the building that she wants to buy from them and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. And then yeah, Hope works at the hotel at the inn. There are two books. One is called The Wedding Crasher and The Worst Best Man by Mia Soso. So the first book, there's like these two are kind of like, you want to read the first one then the second one, even though like they're not really technically, I don't think, a series, but they kind of are, because they entail like different characters. So the first one is The Worst Best Man. That called Lena, who is about to marry this guy Adam, that I'm pretty sure his name is Adam, leaves her at the altar, and claims that it is something that his brother Max said to him that is the reason why he's not marrying Lena, and he can't go through with it. So 2 years later, Lena becomes a wedding planner after getting left at the altar, and wants to get a job at this super fancy hotel that would take her on as a wedding planner to do all these weddings at this fancy hotel. And she ends up walking in the room and sees her ex-fiance and the brother, who work in marketing as part of this hotel's marketing team, and they have to work together. Luckily, Lena and her ex-fiance don't get put together, and she also pretends to not to know either of them. So that's a fun story of watching them interact and navigate the ways, and Lena blames Max for the reason why that everything blew up in her face, and then eventually things take a turn and Max and Lena end up taking a trip together to look at wedding locations, and they end up falling in love. And you kind of find out the truth as to why Adam left Lena and what really happened. And then also Solange, Lena's cousin, which is the Wedding Crasher book. And then that involves a character who's Max's best friend. So Max's best friend, Dean, is getting married. And of course, because Lena's a wedding planner, she has helped plan Dean's wedding with this girl, and Solange sees the girl making out with a guy and speaks up at the wedding as being like, girl, don't do this, don't get married to this guy, you don't love him. And then she's like, no, I actually don't love him, I love my childhood best friend, and they run away together. And then Dean is left at the altar. Dean is Max's best friend, and he's kind of like, what the hell, this was supposed to be my wedding of opportunity, I was going to get upgraded to this higher job at his law firm because he was going to get married and this girl was going to help elevate his career, and then, you know, it all fell apart for him. So Solange, who is Lena's cousin, has to then pretend to be Dean's girlfriend because he's got this fancy lawyer he's trying to like schmooze and hope that she works for the business, for his company that he's working at, to be a lawyer in Boston, like a top firm, Boston law firm. So Solange is trying to help Dean, like kind of as kind of like, it's your fault my wedding got ruined, so you need to help me pretend to be my fake girlfriend. And then she also uses him to be her fake boyfriend for when her family comes, because her family's always giving her a hard time about like, when are you getting married, when are you having kids, why aren't you settling down, why aren't you with anybody? So her mom accidentally fibbed and said that she was with somebody, and so then she needs somebody to pretend to be her fake boyfriend, and it was going to be a roommate, but then she ended up meeting Dean, and you know, one thing leads to another and those two fall in love as well. And then I think Max and Lena end up getting married too, and you kind of like get a little bit of glimpse in their lives, but it's mainly about Solange and Dean in the second one. So the wedding crasher, as opposed to the worst best man, is about Max and Lena. And it's just cool that they incorporated in the second book characters from the first book, so you kind of still get to meet those characters, kind of like in with the Brunspoon Inn. You kind of get to see their lives unfold, even though you're not still with those two characters. And I do like that it's dual person, like, I'm not using the correct term, but both of them, like Max and Lena, are both narrators in the book, and then also with Dean and Solange, you both get to see in both characters' minds and kind of see where they're thinking and what they're at, and like how they interpret a scene is different from what the other person interprets and all this stuff, and it's kind of cool. The next book I read is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then there's also another, like, once you read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you're also gonna want to read the Malibu Rising book as well, because one of the characters that is in Evelyn Hugo's series is also in Malibu Rising. So I'll talk about Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then I'll get into the Malibu Rising book. So Evelyn Hugo is this fictional star from the 1930s, and it kind of follows 1920s, 1930s, follows her life. And how she kind of becomes this famous actress, and the running joke for Evelyn Hugo is she has married so many people so many times. She ends up having 7 husbands, and she ends up writing this book from this girl, a novel of like her life. It's a tell-all book kind of thing. She spills all of the secrets to this one girl, and she's gonna write this book. And later on in the book, you find out why Evelyn picked this girl, because this girl was wondering, like, I'm a low-level journalist. I'm not really high up on the chain, and I work for Vivant, and Vivant wants this exclusive story, and why are you giving it to me? And this girl doesn't understand. And then you kind of find out at the end why Evelyn chose her to pick out the story. So Monique is the journalist that she picks to write her story, and she kind of talks about like her first husband and how he got her where she needed to be, and kind of all the men that she sleeps with in the end. And then she has a child together with one of them, and then also one of the guys she ends up marrying for 24 hours is Mick Riva, who is another big high-end singer celebrity guy. And in the Malibu Rising book, you kind of get to see a little bit into Mick's life and his love life, and how it's mainly focused on his 4 children. So it's mainly focused on his 4 children. He's got 4 different kids. They're all big crazy surfers, and kind of how their lives became what they are. And I just finished that book today, actually. It was really, really good. But I would definitely recommend reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and then reading Malibu Rising, just because it'll make a little bit more sense with the storyline, because they pull out names from the Evelyn Hugo people with the Mick Riva people. So it just helps you understand a little bit more context. You don't necessarily have to read them in order, but it will just make a lot more sense, because Evelyn Hugo does come up in the story a bit, and some rumors that you find out in the other book as well. And it's just kind of interesting, like, how Evelyn will marry these people to protect the one she truly loves. And because being gay too wasn't really a thing women or men were kind of allowed to do at that time. And so Evelyn's trying to struggle with her sexual identity and like who she actually loves and who she wants to be with, and just like trying to fight to keep the woman she loves, or the a secret from the world, because she's an actress in Hollywood, and stuff like that. And it's a really, really interesting book. I really enjoyed it. I also did read another book that one was by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read another book by her as well called After I Do. So it's this couple that's been married for 10 years, and they're kind of at a crossroad, and they decide to take a break for a year. with no contact with each other at all, like absolutely none. And then at the end of the year, they come back and decide whether or not they still want to be married to each other, because they've been feeling like they were in a rut for so long and just trying to like date other people and figure out if they still want to be together after that 10 years, and if they want kids and stuff like that, and when they want to have kids, and when they want to get like if they still want to remain being married, because they were fighting all the time and just not having a good time. So they take this year apart from each other, and she ends up hacking into her husband's email, because he never changed the password, and so she's reading his emails and seeing kind of how, because he writes emails to her but he doesn't actually send them, so she starts reading them, and then, you know, slowly it's I miss you, I want you back, and then slowly it becomes I fell in love with someone else, I want this other girl, and then she becomes heartbroken, she starts dating somebody else, trying to like push past her husband, and no one really knows that her and her husband are separated other than like her immediate family, and they don't really understand why the two of them took a break and like, you know, put a pause on their marriage for a year. And then she dates someone else, and she starts writing him letters about how she's feeling, and just the two of them, how they didn't properly communicate what they wanted to each other, what they actually wanted to each other, and stuff like that. And then something tragic happens, and she loses her mother, her grandmother passes away, and all she wants is her husband to be there, and he realizes that he wants her too, and he ends up finding out about the grandmother, and so he rushes to her. And yeah, I won't say how it ends, but it's kind of cool to see just like how much communication is really key, and how it can affect a relationship, and how you really need to work at communication, and how that's important. So the other book I read, Part of Your World by Abby Jermensky. I'm not saying her name right, but that is about this girl Alexis and this boy Daniel. And Alexis is this super famous surgeon. Her family owns the Montgomery hospital that like 5 generations have worked at this hospital. Like her family started running it. They're all surgeons. Like her parents are surgeons, her brother is a surgeon, she's a surgeon, and she's with this guy, and he's kind of abusive to her, like not physically but emotionally abusive, and so she ends up leaving him, and everyone doesn't understand why, because on paper he is this perfect guy, but in reality he was emotionally abusing her for years. And nobody knew, and she didn't speak out about it, and her parents still think that this guy is this perfect angel, and she can't bring herself to tell them why he's not perfect. And then he ends up being like, oh no, I own this house, I'm gonna move back into this house, and he's trying to like win her back by like manipulating her too. And so she ends up going away on this trip from a funeral, and her car ends up breaking down, and she meets this guy named Daniel, and he has this baby goat in a onesie. And so he like says to her like, oh yeah, have you ever seen a baby goat in a onesie? And she ends up going home to his house, and really likes this guy, even though he's like 10 years younger than her, and she kind of grapples with the fact that like he's a super hot carpenter guy, he's 28 and she's like 38, and she's thinks that they're in two different worlds, and she's from this bougie world and he's from this downtown tiny little family, this little town that doesn't have a lot of resources. It's a very small town, and he ends up working, he owns this called the Grant House, this house that his grandparents own, and he runs like a B&B out of it. And her friends actually surprise her with a trip out to this exact B&B with Daniel, and she has to pretend that she doesn't know Daniel, because, you know, their two worlds don't collide, because she's this rich, famous surgeon, and he's this nobody carpenter from this small town. and she doesn't think the two of them to be together, and her friends won't accept him. And it's just kind of like her struggle with the abuse from her husband and trying to make it work with Daniel and trying to figure out what she wants and who she actually wants to be. And it's a really sweet story. I really like it. And she ends up helping the townspeople because they have a doctor in town, and so whenever she's there visiting Daniel, someone calls Daniel because he's the mayor of the town and needs their help with things, and so Alexis usually ends up tagging along and kind of figuring out what a small town life is. And she was mortified that they were suturing each other up with fishing hooks and fishing lines as suture material because they didn't have anything else, and the nearest hospital was 2 hours away and this person could die, so we needed to do whatever we had available, kind of thing. So it's a cool story. And again, of course, too, they do end up falling in love, and, you know, there's some turbulence in there, and kind of he's not accepted in her world, and how is she going to make this work and stuff like that. I have 15% left on this battery, and I've been talking for 20 minutes. Ugh. This is going to be such a long video, and it's going to be fun to edit this. So the final book I want to talk about is the things we do in the dark. So there is this girl, her name is Paris, and she ends up marrying to this retired comedian, and she wants to keep her life, like who she was, a secret because for whatever reason something happened and she needed to run away and create a whole new identity. And while she is away on a trip, her super famous retired comedian husband gets murdered in their own home, and then she gets framed for the murder. They think she did it, even though she says she didn't. She wasn't even in the States at the time. She was actually in Canada at the time at some sort of yoga conference or something, because she runs a yoga studio. And so her lawyer, who ends up being her husband's best friend, is the one that's trying to bail her out, and you kind of unlock Paris' secret and what's happening to her, as well as there's this serial killer called, not a serial killer, there's this famous killer called the Ice Queen, who is famously known for murdering her boyfriend. And this guy that's doing a podcast on the Ice Queen, so Ruby, and she's like, I know who, like, she's gonna tell all what her story is and like what happened, and she's supposed to be getting out of jail soon, and this guy's doing a podcast on her called The Things We Do in the Dark, and you kind of end up figuring out along the road why Paris wants to keep her identity a secret and what happened to Paris. And there's this missing girl that died, and you're not really sure why Paris is running away, but this mystery girl that passed away has something to do with Paris and like what happened. And she's being blackmailed by the Ice Queen, saying, I know who you really are, I know what you did, I'm going to tell everyone if you don't pay me off. And so you're trying to figure out, like, well, Paris is a super sweet girl, like, what could she have done? Like, we don't think she murdered her husband, and she's trying to figure out who did it because the cops don't believe it, the cops think it was her, and so she's trying to prove who it actually is. And yeah, there's a tiny bit of romance in that novel, but mainly it's like a flash from the past, and some of it takes place in Canada too, which is kind of cool, because a lot of the books take place in like the States or something or wherever, and it's just kind of fun when it's like, oh, I know that town, I know that place, I've been there, you know, like some of it was in Toronto, some of it was in Vancouver, some of it was in the States, in LA. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my little very ranty book talk. I will definitely do more because there's definitely a whole bunch of other books I want to discuss as well. I still have more I want to talk about, so there will be another book club book coming like thing soon. I think I will continue to do these because I'm reading so many more books and I'm really into them. So look forward to that as well. I know it's been a super long time since we sat down and had some books. So I hope you had a snack, hope you got comfortable, because that was a lot to unload on you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later, guys. Bye.